Well, everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Raise Your Bars podcast. And a little bit different today. I'm here with my good friend Valerie Fraze, as Chris Baker and his wonderful wife and family are on a cruise. A little bit envious of them. But thankfully, I've had my friend Valerie here step into Chris's spot tonight. And we're just going to chat a little bit about a book that we're both reading right now, and one that she recommended to me. But Valerie and I have been friends since, when did we meet? 2016. We would have met in
Been that long?
2016.
Okay.
The first 21 Laws of
Mm,
Leadership mastermind group that you and Jeremy were a part of back then.
for
That was
sure.
my first, I think that was my first group, or
I
maybe
think
the second one. You maybe you were in the second round. I can't remember, but we met in 2016, and since that time we've become a really good friends, and I value our friendship. But also, you've have this entrepreneurial heart and started a business, and I'll let you tell people about that in a moment. And we've continued our relationship since then. So thank you for joining me tonight.
yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a good journey, and I've taken a bunch of different classes that Al has put on, and it's been great. It's always nice to dive into a book with a group of people. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So you started your career. Where did you start your career? Actually, I don't even know if we've ever gone that far back. Or did you start with Jeremy at Thunderstruck?
um, well, I don't know. It depends what you just like want to say starting your career. My very first job was in a restaurant, and I'm trying to think. There, I would have just been a server, like, at the front of the till.
Yeah.
Then, there was a couple more restaurant jobs, but then I was the manager at a coffee shop when I was 17.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then, yeah, and then after that, I was working at an office, and I managed that as well. And then after that, that's when I started working for Jeremy. So I was in
Jeremy.
school,
Yeah.
just finishing school when I went to go start working for Jeremy.
Wow.
Where I moved around in a bunch of different positions and helped him kind of just get things going. I mean, obviously, lots of people helped him get things going, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's where
That's
things
cool.
get.
But then you left and you started your own company. So tell everybody what you do now.
Yeah, so I actually have a bookkeeping and accounting business, and then on top of that, we do some consulting and I do some fractional integrator work. So yeah, I actually have a book. I my education started in marketing, and then I kind of phased back into accounting. In high school, I took accounting, and yeah, long story short, I actually found a book that I purchased when I would have been 16 called How to Start Your Bookkeeping Business. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so it's like it was always there. It didn't actually come to fruition until 2020. So I was more in a marketing role when I was working for Jeremy there. And then the last seat that I was in, I was in the finance seat. So yeah, I've always been involved in the financial aspect of things, or I've always kind of like known that world. And I always did bookkeeping on the side when I worked there too. So it just became the main thing.
So what's your company called? Let's tell everybody.
So my company is called Indigo Bookkeeping Services, and
Love it.
yeah, so you can find me online. We actually service Canadian businesses across the country. So super.
Yeah, that's great. You've grown a great team. You've expanded your business. I have to say I'm very proud of you, because if you look back to 2016 when we met, who knew that this would be where you would go in just 8 years?
Yeah, I always knew. So probably since I was 17 or so, I always knew that I was going to own my own business. I just didn't know what it would be. And
Hmm.
I just when people would say like, "Oh, I don't know what I want to do," or whatever, like that was never a thing for me. It was always like, I know that it's going to be something business related, and I just always knew that I wanted to help people grow their business and be a part of building a business and being around that, like being people who are growing and changing. And
Yeah,
so,
that's
yeah. And then,
awesome. So yeah, she is my bookkeeper too, so I will give him kudos for that. And I'm probably
yes.
not the easiest client to deal with because I'm always late getting my paperwork in. Although I will be honest, it is September 2nd, and yesterday on September 1st, I dropped off my paperwork in the Dropbox at your office
You sure did.
for the month of August, and that is a new record for Al Rattan. So why don't you explain? I know we don't have piles of time to talk, but what do you talk about that fractional integrator part of your business that you started to do? Can you give a quick brief? I know it's probably a long, complicated prose description, but what could you tell us about that quickly?
Yeah, sure. So, long story short, it comes back to an operating system called EOS. So, Entrepreneurial Operating System is what EOS stands for. And excuse me, a client of mine was actually looking for somebody to fill the finance seat in their EOS system, in their organization or their accountability chart. And long story short, over time, I became the best option for the integrator role, or I checked the most boxes for it, and it kind of turned into this whole path of like there's an existence of fractional integrator work, and so fractional just means that you're not working there full time, but you're still a really integral part of the team.
Yep.
And you operate, it's not like a consultant where you're saying, here's what you need to do. You're a lot more involved, and because you're in their weekly meetings and a part of their quarterly planning and annual planning, you're really inside the business. And
Right.
so EOS has a structure where the integrator exists, and essentially you're helping the visionary, which is often the business owner, basically hone in those ideas and take care of the leadership team, because visionaries generally are missing some of the aspect of accountability and being able to follow through on things and so forth. So it's like
Right.
my job to like help with that.
Help that.
So
And that
yeah.
is pretty it sounds pretty exciting actually, and I guess you've started to be a part of different businesses, and of course, you're growing and expanding that end of your bookkeeping service as well, right? As another sort of a sister
Yeah.
organization or whatever.
I
Yeah.
need to do a better job of working on the messaging, but essentially, I want to build this sector called Indigo Insights. That's a deeper dive of getting inside of someone's business, because when you're so involved in the finance side, you can really get an understanding of what's going on in the business if you're connected to the business owner, and you can see like what needs to happen or what needs to change. And that's actually a large part of being an integrator, is understanding the profit and loss, and you actually own that piece. Like if the business
Yeah.
doesn't succeed, it's technically your fault.
It's on
Obviously
you.
there's a
Yep.
lot of rules that come into play that the visionary has to be willing to go ahead with, and it's a lot of work to maintain that. Like you're building that relationship, and you're constantly trying to make sure that the business is continuing to grow, and you're following the business plan, and the visionary stays on track
Right.
with that, and it's along with the leadership team as well. And so yeah, so it's really fun. It's good hard work, and I really enjoy it. Like it's uh it's something that touches on so much of what I love about business, and it's very much connected to working on the business, not so much inside. Like you are involved on the inside, but it's very much the bigger picture stuff, at
Right.
least from the fractional perspective. It definitely is. So yeah,
That's
that's
it.
the data world.
So I think that whole fractional integration part of the business that you sort of led you to this book, right? So I know this is a podcast, but I mean, we also share this video on YouTube, and it's a book called Shine, and it's by Gino Wickman and Rob Dube. I don't know how to say his last name. Rob, I'm sorry if you ever hear this. I apologize for butchering it. But you actually gave me a copy of this book and said I had needed to read 2 of the chapters first, which I was very diligent, and I did do it. And we want to talk just briefly about that tonight, because I think part of you expanding this messaging and growing your business into this end of thing takes into account a lot of what we want to talk about tonight. And he's got a chapter in here, and it's on one of the disciplines, and he talks about 10 disciplines for maximizing your impact. And it's not only in business, but also he talks about your inner peace in this as well. And discipline number one is this 10-year thinking. And he talks in here about shift your mind from short-term thinking to thinking in 10-year time frames. So if you look back at this chapter when you read it, and you said this is one of your favorite chapters in the book, what really stood out to you is like, wow, I need to change something in the way I think, the way I'm doing business, in order to achieve the goals and the dreams that I really have about where this business can go.
Yeah, I think well, there's a lot of things. So I just to wrap or quickly bring you to the point of where I learned about the book is I went to the EOS conference in April, and it was in San Diego, and I flew home. I had to stop in Vancouver, and then I did another little trip to Calgary and so forth. So anyway, I had a lot of downtime, pretty much the whole day of traveling, and so I just crushed out this book. I was really into it, and I went through it a second time a couple months later, and I started to write. You can see my book has a bunch of notes, and there's lots of highlighting and stuff going on. But
Yep.
yet, and you're thinking the big thing, I think, well, in combination of the making decisions out of love and not fear, those two together, a lot of things happened really quickly because once you actually put down what is the 10-year goal, and I think too, people get so caught up with like what the exact details need to look like. But the reality is, like, if you have a vision for what 10 years looks like from now, or what success in 10 years looks like from now, and it doesn't always have to be monetary, then once you actually write it down, you can start pulling back the onion and saying, okay, what am I going to do here and how am I going to do this? And so in terms of what did I get out of this? There's a whole section that's talking about, okay, so you've written this 10-year plan down now. What is your task list and your calendar and your bank account looking like? And do those things actually represent what you said is going to happen in the 10-year plan? Because if you're not making those micro changes now, don't expect it to show up in the 10-year plan,
Right.
10-year vision.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like it started creating a lot of reality of, okay, where do you want to go and what do you want to do and so forth. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think we often just get lost in the day to day, like we're enjoying what we're doing, but we keep saying, oh, we'll try to get to this point or whatever, and nobody, or not nobody, but like generally we don't create a plan and actually go for it. And
Right.
we create these plans and we forget about them. You make
Yeah.
that resolution and you're like, I'm gonna be better, and then it falls off.
Yeah, well, I did some research on this because of some other stuff I was teaching, but they actually said that only about 8% of the people that actually set a New Year's resolution actually follow through and complete that by the end of the year. Most of the people have given up by the end of the first month, and I think that a lot of what this book is saying about mapping this out, mapping out the progression that you want to make, is really holding yourself accountable, because it even talks about, then once you've done this, share this with a loved one or a mentor or a coach or somebody that can hold you accountable to taking the steps that you need to take daily or monthly or weekly, whatever it may be, to actually reach the goal that you set for yourself for 10 years down the road. And
Yeah,
10 years seems like a long time to set a goal for, but if you really have expanded growth, expanded mindset, and big dreams, it's not going to happen overnight.
no, and that's the thing is that the whole point of 10-year thinking is that when you start making decisions, because we're living in a world where we're so like we want gratification right away
Instant
and
gratification. Yeah.
instant gratification. And so when you actually start taking a step back and saying, is this a part of my 10-year plan? Is this getting me closer to that 10-year plan? Is it a part of it? And you actually ask those questions, you start to realize that maybe some of the things that you're doing don't need to be done, or maybe some of the things you are doing are actually taking you on that path already. So it's just reassurance too of some of the habits you have built. This is why we're going to keep doing them. And so, many people will have something about health or money or yeah, their business growth or whatever. And it's like, okay, so what are the micro things that you're doing every single day to get there?
Right.
And yeah, really starting to actually envision it. And so, yeah, like it specifically gives you the steps of like pick your time frame, write down the date, write down the age you'll be, and like reflect what your accomplishments are. And then you need to write out the first draft. And so many people get so caught up with the first draft, they're like, okay, I need to have all the details laid out. And it's like, no, just write out a few words and like just use ChatGPT to help you out. There's no reason you can't go in there
Exactly.
and say, here is my vision. Help me write it this way, or help me, and it's like
Yeah.
you need to get so caught up with
And that
the
gives you an outline, because I think a lot of people get, analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis type thing, or that it has to be that perfectionist in people that want everything to be right before they start. But that paralyzes a lot of people. And I know Chris says this often on our podcast, because you're never going to reach perfection, but you can strive for excellence.
Mhm.
right? And at least start on something, because again, so many people get fear, that let that fear, which is again, when we talk about, you talked about that decisions made out of love or fear, and fear is really he explains in here, is our ego getting in the way of us moving forward, and that paralyzes a lot of people, and then we get trapped, and then we give up because we get frustrated.
That's right.
And when we really operate in our true self, which he explains that love is our true self, um, it takes that mind shift change in order to be able to move forward. And he talks in here of a 10-year thinking is more than a goal. It says you're reprogramming your brain to think in a longer time frame. Okay. So I don't have to accomplish this in a year. You give yourself permission to work towards this over a longer period of time, which gives you a little bit of grace, I guess you could say, as you're working things out and planning things out.
Yeah, and I think that there's a saying too that it's like most people will way overshoot their 1 year goal, way undershoot their 5 or 10 year goals, where they don't even know what they're capable of for those 5 or 10 year goals. And so I think that's why it's fun to maybe have more of a broad vision and then start working like reverse engineering it backwards. And I tell you, like I spent like weeks thinking about how what the planning of parts of my 10 year vision, how that's supposed to look, and it was hard, and I definitely got into a place where I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to look, I don't know how that's going to look. And maybe that's the point. You're not supposed to plan it to the point that you know how every single piece looks. And I like to plan everything, so I'm a planner.
No, yes,
so,
you are.
so that's hard for me, but the reality is that you're never like, yeah, again, you come back to that analysis paralysis where you try to dissect it to a point where you can't even you can't make progress. And
Right.
that's not the point of this. And
No.
so, yeah, and like it doesn't mean like every single day now I'm only thinking in 10-year planning, but when you're making some of those big decisions in life, like where do you want to live? Where like what do you not appreciate about your life right now and what can you do to make that better?
Right.
Um and is that part of the 10 year, like in 10 years, are you going to still be okay with the things you have going on in your life?
Yeah. And I
And
think it
so,
also helps you. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
yeah.
I was going to say, I think it also helps you when you do have that 10-year outlook or that vision of what things could be. When those distractions come your way and try to pull you off track with, like, the shiny object syndrome,
Mhm.
it helps you. It can help you actually stay focused. Wait a minute. Let's evaluate this. Is this going to help me get to that 10-year goal? No. Okay. I need to eliminate this or put this off for now. Maybe come back and re-examine it later. Or yes, it will. Okay, let's investigate it further and see if we should invest some time and energy into this shiny object that does appear in our lives at times. I'm one to get very easily distracted, Valerie. You know that. But for me, I think that I can see how this would help me stay the course.
Right.
Yeah.
It was actually interesting because I mean, it's not specifically the book, but there was a lot of things that happened from um, March till whatever the end of April, kind of things. A lot of decent changes happening, and I wasn't looking to move or anything, but I always kind of just watched the house market and kind of a part of that 10-year thinking. This house came up like, and again too, I was like totally content with what I had and everything, but yeah, in talking to my husband and stuff, we determined that there was something better out there that we could go for, and it made sense with what our 10-year vision was, and it just like things just started to fall into place. It's like as soon as you actually put something down on paper and you start working towards it and thinking about it, things just fall into place, and
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah. Well,
It's,
Napoleon Hill talks about, having that burning desire in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And when you have that burning, all-consuming desire to work towards something, then the universe, God, whatever your personal beliefs are, people that are listening, brings things into alignment so those things can actually happen, right? Because you're focused on it.
that's
Uh, and then things start happening for that. So now this is the Raise Your Bars podcast. We have a couple minutes left. So bars again, Valerie, behaviors plus actions equals results and success. So what behaviors and actions have you taken because of this book? And what kind of results are you already starting to see about it or see from it?
So back to the other chapter where we didn't dive into it, but there's another chapter in here, or discipline about making decisions out of love instead of fear. And
Yes.
it's interesting
Really good.
how, we're in a place where it doesn't really make sense. I'm going to go back to the house situation. It doesn't
Mhm.
really make sense to renew into a new mortgage with the way interest rates are. But it was like, you do the math, you figure out, can this work? Does it make sense for our lifestyle and so forth? And it's a whole picture adjustment that we kind of made. And it was like, yeah, we just have to stop. Like we deserve this. There's nothing wrong with where we're headed and what we're doing. And so it was like, I think sometimes just making that decision out of love and not fear. It's like, doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. And not that you want to be ridiculous and take risks that you can't handle, but it's just like the reality is like, I wasn't, the people were like, oh, aren't you concerned that the interest rate's going to come down? It's like, I've budgeted for what I need to do. It's okay if that's just a bonus if that happens.
Right.
This is what we're going to do. Like, this is the plan. It's all good. And so anyway, like that's just that's part of that, making the decision out of love rather than fear. And yeah, like I had someone in my office who was a large part of my business. And when she left, like there was a lot of things that I was like, okay, I don't know where this is at. I don't know where this is at. And but it was actually like, it was really a blessing in disguise, because there was things that I got to dive back into and determine like where we could be better, where we could be more efficient,
Right.
and connect better with my staff. And it was like, that immediate like, hey, I'm leaving, was like, okay, fear-based decision
Here.
making going on, right?
Right.
Kind of turned around. It was like, okay, so um, how can we make this the best situation possible for everybody? And it was all good. Like there was nothing like, yeah, everything worked really well.
Yeah.
So and I think too, it's just like your reaction time, slowing it down, and really thinking, am I making this decision because I'm scared of something that's going on in the economy? Or am I making this decision because it's something that I truly believe is what I deserve and what I want for myself and my family? Like, how are you making those decisions? And yeah, like you said, most people are making decisions out of fear and ego. And it's that's where you kind of get yourself into actual trouble, and you realize, okay, this isn't actually who I am and what I want to be about. And so, yeah, those are some of
Why
the,
am I doing this? That's
yeah.
so good. That's so good. So I do one last line out of the book that I want to read because I think this ties it all up nicely. Is 10-year thinking will help free you because you'll stop worrying about the short-term small stuff. Stop worrying about the short-term stuff. Worry about not worry. Focus on the long term. What's the long term going to bring us?
Right.
So again, Valerie, we're gonna wrap it up here. But again, thank you so much for stepping into Chris's square on the screen tonight and
Thanks
doing
for
and taking
having
some
me.
time from your long weekend to record the podcast with me. And if you are a Canadian business owner, Indigo Bookkeeping is who you wanna reach out to if you need help, in your bookkeeping for your business or in this fractional integrator type of program where Valerie comes side you and helps you grow and expand your business. And I can attest to her maturity and her skill set. And she's just an all around great human being. So thank you again for taking the time tonight to be here
Yeah.
with me.
Thanks for the kind words.
All right.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's always fun to do these little chats. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.